Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our next session at OPEX APAC 2021. Our session is going to be on Accelerate Your Transformation with the Power of Process. And I will be handing over to our host for today, Daniel Weatherhead. Daniel, over to you.
Thank you, Felicia. I'm Daniel from Leonardo, and welcome to this panel where we will discuss how to accelerate your transformation using the power of process. So in today's session, we're going to discuss with our panelists today how to leverage process management as a core to identify efficiency opportunities and drive effective digital transformation. So joining me on today's panel is Juliana Johari, the Manager of Organisational Transformation, Change Management, Human Capital Strategy, Group HR at Petronas. So welcome, Juliana.
Thank you, Daniel.
We've also got Alan Song, who's the Head of Strategy and Transformation Security Services at Standard Chartered Bank. Welcome, Alan.
Thanks for having me.
And wrapping up, we've got Mikhail Yorna, Director of Business Transformation Solutions for Software AG APJ. Welcome, Mikhail.
Thank you, Daniel. Pleasure to be here.
So today we're going to look at the critical steps that allow for successful transformation through business process management. We're going to chat about the innovative ways to analyse process performance, costs and areas for improvement, and how to implement strategy-based frameworks for business transformation and to fuel operational excellence. So during this session, we'll welcome questions through the Q&A function, so please bombard us with questions and we'll go through those questions at the end. So we're going to go through about 5 parts today in today's discussion. So firstly, we're going to talk about starting out on that transformation journey. So I'm going to address some specific questions to each of our panelists, but we're going to chat about what are the main reasons that you started out on the transformation journey at your respective organisations, and what transformation means to you at the businesses that you're employed. So Juliana, perhaps we'll start with you first. Tell us about your journey at Petronas from establishing the BPM Centre of Excellence to developing a business and process architecture. So what have been the critical successes that you've seen over the past few years?
Okay, Daniel, thank you for the question. How long do I have? The case for change, why we did what we're doing now, that is to establish BPM COE was, back in 2015 when we had that oil price crash, we were looking at ways to improve our operational excellence, to reduce our value leakages, increase our value creation and all that. And of course, prior to that, business process management has been implemented, but probably fragmented across the business in Petronas. As probably all of you know, the business in Petronas is quite dynamic. We have, downstream, upstream, we have midstream, and then new businesses coming up. And there's no like one unison initiative to really put them together. So using that opportunity, what we call upside risk, when the oil price crashed, we were looking at ways to improve our operational excellence. That's when we saw some pinpoint in improving our line of sight. Yeah, and then by doing a more clear process ownership, and then so that we don't have much of conflicting priorities. So first thing that we did was to look at our process and what to improve, and how can we standardize the way we manage all of our processes. So that was really the triggering point of how and why business process management COE was established. And of course, from then on, the critical successes that we can claim to date is the establishment of the BPM COE first and foremost, of course. And when we have established that, we were able to unify all those fragmented BPM implementation that I was telling you about. And we managed to standardize the methodology. How can you really stitch all this process if you don't have a standardized methodology? So that is first thing first. Things that you have to take a few steps backwards. And I always like to say out this saying, go slow to go fast. And it's okay to take a few steps back, just to make sure that everything is in line, make sure everyone is on the same page. So that's the first few things that we did, and the critical success that we can claim. And then, of course, standardizing the glossary, business process glossary, that is also a very important thing. And the next step that we did, which is quite natural, is to standardize our level 1. Again, how do we teach if you don't have a standardized level 1? So that's one of the first few things that we did. And standardizing the process taxonomy, what goes on in level 1, level 2, all the way down. And that is the critical path towards us developing the Petronas-wide business architecture, and which is now a very important feat towards the enterprise architecture development for the whole of Petronas. So that's basically, what we have done, what we did before our establishment, during the establishment, and what we can claim so far. Thank you for the question, Daniel.
That standardization from alignment, that's something that I hear really strongly. Alan, for you, for your organization, what do you believe was the key driver and the starting point for realigning your strategy for business process management? So how has this helped you unlock hidden value in your operations?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you a sense of our footprint first. We have 1,500 operations staff across about 30 plus markets. So right away, you can see that there's a lot of market nuances. There's a lot of non-standard processes being run effectively across the globe. So, I think we asked this question a few years back. How do we transform? How do we look at operational efficiencies? Unfortunately, the focus, and I think this happens at a lot of firms, is the focus of transformation was only on technology, new technology, replacing technology, upgrading technology, without enough focus on the business process side. So what we found was, we weren't recovering the benefits we needed because we were building technology on, processes that weren't optimized or actually ones that weren't being followed in certain markets. So really what we identified is that missing link was process management itself. And we started on this transformation journey over the past year or two of really selling that as the crux of what we need to do in order to change the way we operate and to get those operational efficiency that we have been hoping for over the past few years. And when it comes to process ownership, that also has been very top down. And what we're trying to do now is we're trying to use the right tools to make it more collaborative, optimize it through crowdsourcing, getting ideas from all those different markets and all the different levels of staff that we have. We've never really heard their voices before. So now we're seeing that we can use tools like Eris, other BPM tools to crowdsource opportunities, identify improvements that are market specific that actually will bring us benefit when we look at automating or improving the process itself, running lean exercises, and all those different types of things that we already do, but we've lacked that BPM, business process management side, along with it.
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, I think we'll discuss some of the challenges of collaboration, both from being that sort of tech-led solution, but also how do we do that for the various communities, professional communities inside of our business. Mikhail, for your customers, what does transformation actually mean in 2021?
Yeah, thanks for that, Daniel. I think you'll hear that also in the answers and what Juliana and Alan just shared with us. I think what we see, if we think about transformation, what does it actually mean? It means that you're changing your way of working. And this is something that I think we have never seen a time that is requiring the change and changing your business model, changing your operating model today than ever before. I think if you look at, Juliana mentioned the oil crisis as a triggering point. We see changes or innovations from a technology perspective that typically are a driver of changing your operating model. Enhanced and increased customer expectations as well. I think that is true probably for both Standard Chartered Bank as well as Petronas. That really is also a key driver for being able to deliver on that and change and adapt the way of working to those demands. And also, I mean, if you look at the current situation that we're in from a pandemic or from a COVID-19 perspective, that's, I think, also really forced many of our, if not all of our clients, to really rethink their way of working, to adapt their business processes, their supply chains, their operating model, if you like, to be able to meet those changes and demands. And I believe that is something that is continuous. That is not something that is, I see, going away anymore. I think it's becoming more and more important that, transformation is something that is here to stay, and change will be continuous. So I see our clients really building a capability around change management, if you like, to have a continuous change and transformation capability that is not something that is done by a change management team, but just is embedded completely in their way of working, in their operating model, and really strengthening that muscle of being able to change and to be agile in terms of how to deal with, the challenges that organizations face today.
Yeah, I think some things that really come out from what you're saying is around that ways of working, that sort of, I suppose, the digital transformation of transformation has been something that's been around for, probably for a very long time, but the past 24 months have really dragged everyone into it having to be that digital experience, and that speed of transformation is something that's obviously not going away. So I think I like the way you said it, Michiel, in terms of making that continuous and bolstering the capabilities to support that sort of rapid change. So moving on to our next theme around, I suppose, implementing those sort of strategy-based frameworks that, I suppose, undergird what we would sort of say is going to power transformation. So we've spoken about, getting the right balance between strategy development, functional management, process improvement, and process delivery is at the heart of successful business transformation. So not being too technical and academic, and understanding that there is also a practical delivery that we all need to focus on as we're rolling our transformation. So I suppose what we're going to ask of you guys is, what, from your experience, do you see as being those critical BPM enablers that facilitate sustainable business transformation? So Alan, I'll start with you. So what are the specific use cases at Standard Charter that focused on optimization and digital transformation?
Sure. We have a lot of use cases, but so I'll try to focus on the key ones, as Michiel knows. Going through a few of them that are probably relevant to people listening to this. One of the things that Michiel mentioned was new ways of working. And I think a good thing to point out is a lot of these use cases, these are things that we do currently do, but we do it in a slower, more inefficient way. And it's about using BPM, business process management, to accelerate it, get more out of it, and identify more opportunities. So one of the big ones for us is being able to see what are the standard versus non-standard processes across our markets. We have a global operating model, but how many of our countries are actually adhering to it? By how much are they adhering to it? And so in a way to identify opportunities to either adhere to those global standards or find ways to optimize last mile solutions so that they can adhere to local market nuances, but in an efficient way. A lot of the times those are just being done because we don't see them centrally. They're just being done manually on the ground because they don't have the resources. They're not getting the digitization. Another one is lean exercise, accelerating lean exercise and reviews. So we're all used to hiring consultants, sending them out to our location, spending lots of money, coming back with a bunch of process documentation, and that's a one-time use. Well, we want to be able, obviously, in the new world and new way of working, we can't travel as much. We can't see people face to face. We need something. We need a central golden source of process to work around and collaborate around. We found we've actually been able to accelerate some of our existing doing lean reviews that used to take 8 to 10 weeks to about 2 to 3 weeks now. So even if we're accomplishing the same, we're doing it a lot faster. We're able to accomplish a lot more within one cycle or within 1 year. Underpinning that is really just the crowdsourcing capabilities, being able to get everybody onto a system, looking at the same process, making sure they're up to date, submitting their ideas, iterating on top of it, is again a critical piece to making sure this new ways of working is sustainable and it drives that continuous improvement. On the technology side, I think it's a big help to avoid like-for-like transformation. This is again, the technology-focused transformation. Sometimes you get lucky and it's good. Sometimes it's based on like-for-like bad requirements, and what you get out of it is the same or worse than you had before. So you're not really getting the operational efficiencies. Process management is critical to ensuring that you're coming out of this technology investment with something to show for it, and without it, more times than not, you come out worse. You have to have more workarounds. You have day 2 problems. You have to hire more people, which is not really what you want when you invest millions of dollars in a new platform. And as a part of that, handling requirements that change over time. Obviously, we all work in markets where things change, right? Whether they're regulations, whether they're consumer requirements, being able to understand and see those and be proactive on managing those requirements allows you to really get into a real agile mode. Otherwise, as agile as you are, if you're still sticking with the same requirements you gave on day 1, you're still operating in a waterfall environment. So having your process tell you that in a real-time basis is critical to making sure your requirements are being aligned as agile and as real-time as possible. And then the last one I mentioned is just operationalizing across markets. This is something that's really important to us. We often have transformation in isolation. So we will fix something for one market without really looking at, okay, can I reuse this across other markets? They may not need it exactly as it is, but just understanding the core functionality, understanding how this fits in one location's end-to-end process may help me optimize another market or my global standard or a region as a whole. That's proven very valuable as well. And you're getting more out of that investment than in the past might have been just proving dividends in one market, a team of 20 people, whereas now it's giving you value across teams of 200, 300, 400.
Yeah, I think that's important, that idea of agility and reuse. True agility is actually that sort of smartness, and you said proactivity of reuse, and I think that's a really good point. So, Juliana, where did you start when building out the business architecture, process architecture, I suppose end-to-end view as the method that sort of drove your transformation?
Right. Thank you for that question again, Daniel. Okay. Just to echo what Alan and also Mikhail have mentioned earlier, about change management, that change is constant, and that the fact that we need the right tool to address whatever that we are addressing in terms of process improvement and whatnot, that is very important as we progress and also evolve in our approach in transformation. At the end of the day, it's about addressing the fundamental, i.e. the business process. And of course, the way we see things end to end evolved as well from day 1 we look at BPM until today. And it's always the balance of what's academic and then practice, what's real for Petronas, and then of course in our today's business context. And again, in terms of safeguarding the approach towards whatever that come our way in the future. And I remember us running through our transformation journey, and then we were hit back with the pandemic, and then we need to get up and start running again. And this is when the right tool has to be in place for us to really advance our way in BPM. And like I mentioned earlier, it's all about addressing the fundamental new way of work. It's also about how do you retain your capability. Institutionalization of your capability is very key. Despite probably some may say it's the 80s, 90s kind of topic, but in this new way of work where your resources is limited, and you need to make do with what you have. So that is the crux of operational excellence anyways, being more effective, efficient make do with what you have, minimize your resources, and then still come up with more value. So by having the right tool and by having the right key personnel and by having the right approach in the first place is very key. Yeah, and as far as our approach to doing this business process management, of course, there's a lot of school of thought into how you look at this transformation, but we always look at it, we try to look at it from the very fundamental, and we research a lot of methodology and approach out there. And one of the main ones were Rumbler Brush. If some of you have heard, it's a very complex, yet it addresses all of the whole ecosystem of the process. Looking at wider lens. I think they advocate on not doing things in piecemeal, which is what we did prior to having a BPM COE. We did it in piecemeal, so that is against what Rumbler Brush are saying, and then we need to look at it in a wider lens, look at multiple layers of the process, look at the relationship between functions of the process in totality, in that essence. Then only you can find the gap for the improvement that you need to overcome. So Rumbler Brush is one of the many philosophy that we look at when we do our process measurement, process improvement, and that, in fact, as we go along this challenging time, pandemic, and then the what do you call that, the uncertainty of the digital world. At the end of the day, we saw how going back to the fundamental of understanding your process, the whole super system of it is very key, regardless of where you want to head to. Even if you were to do Agile, at the end of the day, it's all about the process that speaks to you. That's the most fundamental thing that I would say how we manage to sustain our critical success to date. Yeah, I hope I answer your question, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, as you sort of said, I think it's understanding your organisation and what that process is, as you said, is fundamental to you. Don't get too much in the weeds in terms of the academic. Understand that understand how that's practical and be adaptive to that. So, Michiel, just to wrap this one up, what do you, if you had to pick one key enabler that you believe helps between the balance between strategy and process improvement, what do you think? Well, what would that be for you?
Yeah, for me, because I think it's hard to say, well, that there's one key enabler. I think when we look at the whole topic of getting from a strategy into execution or into an optimized, let's say, new way of working or to-be state, if you like, you really need to make sure that you have a mechanism in place that can deal with those strategic requirements. Having the customer expectations set first as a starting point. What does that mean for us from an organizational, but also from a process perspective? How do we actually deliver on those requirements? I think that is really critical. And that's also where I see there's a lot of research on this as well, looking into the success rates of transformation or digital transformation programs, which is not particularly, very good per se. I think the average is between 50 and 90%, depending on the research that you take of transformation programs that actually fail or are at least not able to deliver on the anticipated objectives in the first place. So you need to really have, and I think process management, BPM, is really a foundational element in that to bridge the gap between an objective, between the strategy from the organization into, okay, how do we actually bring that into execution? And how do we actually implement that new way of working? How do we actually monitor that state and make sure that we are aligned to what we are promised to deliver to our customers? So I think that is really a critical foundational element that I see is it's not a new topic per se. Business process management was there already for many years ago, but I think it's still equally and even more relevant than ever, if you ask me.
Yeah, I totally agree. So just a reminder, if you've got any questions, please pop those in the Q&A down the bottom. So when we talk about that way of working, we're going to shift base here and talk about, transformation and how that enables innovation, innovation to the various businesses you're at. We hear a lot about data and using data to inform process improvement. We've already spoken about around the nature of rapid improvements, being agile and quick to respond to market. So we can see that organisations are seeking to leverage the insight of data in order to more rapidly discover their current state processes, identify those areas for bottlenecks, demonstrate quick ROI and areas for improvement. So I suppose I'm interested in terms of what are the various innovations that your organisations have used to analyse process performance and identify those areas for improvement. So Juliana, you talked about the importance of monitoring real-time critical processes. Have you looked at process mining, data mining, or other innovations to drive this business awareness?
Okay, right. Well, BPM is a journey, and then as we embark into the journey, and we are at the maturity state of, looking at ways to improve our process. And yes, we have looked into process mining. We have done a POC, a proof of concept, on one of our critical process, and we saw how the value of using this process mining. It get us to having to standardize the process after looking at, the process went looping, and then, a lot of non-value added activities were created, and it caused us, so much of value leakages. So after using that process mining, during the POC, we managed to standardize some of the processes, harmonize some of the processes, and of course simplify it, making it leaner, and reduce all the looping and unnecessary looping and so on and so forth. We managed to come up with a proper performance management for the process, and of course, last but not least, on the resource optimization, we were able to reduce the unnecessary manning on some of the process. So yes, we saw the value of using process mining, and I think next year onwards we are looking at more opportunities for more of our critical processes to be undergoing this process mining activities. Yeah.
Thanks, Juliana. Alan, what have been some of the innovations around data or AI or machine learning that you've been looking at for Standard Chartered Bank?
Yeah, so kind of reiterating what Julian was saying, I think we're early in our journey as well of looking at more innovative AI-driven process mining tools. Definitely a lot in the market, and we're looking at the ones that fit in with our organization, with our systems. But I think when it comes to, if you go back to the problem statement here, is how do you keep your process model up to date? How do you keep it real time? That's a big reason why we want to process mine. But there's another way that we've been addressing it as well, and I feel like this is a innovative approach in terms of process modeling, is really maximizing the data model behind your process. So it's no longer just a step on a diagram. It actually holds attributes that are linking to various different transactional data, client data, system data across your organization. So all of a sudden, if you think about your current state, you have so many different artifacts and documents, DOIs, capacity models, cycle times, relationship factors. Now we can put that all together into one data model, integrate that within our internal systems, and start. That's how we are doing the real time process discovery, and also it allows us to then have more of our team, such as our risk managers, compliance teams, use the same process model to get what they need to get done. Because now that we're getting a feed from our risk systems, I will know where in my end-to-end process an event is impacting that process step. And not only will our risk managers know, the people on the ground running the process will know, and everybody is on the same page. If you look at the current way of working, this is all very retroactive. An incident happens, we write up a report, we have 500 meetings about it, and then 2 months later, we find out, okay, what the cause was and who was involved. We can be much more proactive there. And again, that's kind of leveraging BPM for things that aren't really the core of BPM's use case, but it allows you to go towards this whole enterprise solution, which it really should be. I think that's what we're all talking about here, is getting BPM and process at the center of what we do. I don't think that's been embraced by a lot of firms in the industry, at least in our industry, but we're trying to move towards that. And this is one of the use cases that are really showing how BPM is really just that's how you should run your enterprise. That's how you should keep track of all your data. That's how you keep everybody, not just operations teams, but business, client-facing teams, risk teams, and management teams, all on the same table and looking at the same things and having the same objectives and targets.
Nikhil, as we've discussed here, there's an appetite to be data-led and to use a lot of, I suppose, the industry buzzwords around, data mining, process mining, to fuel process improvement, but it's difficult to get these things operationalized across big, large enterprises. So, how do you sort of see this manifesting itself in the clients that you sort of see, and what other innovations in the market do you believe, or do you sort of see that companies are using?
Yeah, I fully agree with what Alan just mentioned on this. I think what we see, of course, there's a lot of new technologies being available, and that is great. There's a lot of innovation happening. Also, I see really the focus going more into data-led and data-led discussions from a management perspective to really tap and utilize the rich data that nowadays is available. And that's not an easy task, because it is quite easy to get distracted by either new technologies or by the amount of data that is in front of us. I think what it comes down to is, okay, how do we make sure that we have a mechanism that is allowing us to look into the right data for our problem statement, or using the right technology for the type of challenge or problem that we're trying to solve. So I think that also links it back to that operating model again, to really understand what is it that we're trying to do and what is it that we're trying to achieve here, and use that to then make better and more informed decisions on how to either improve or how to change that. That is true for process mining. I think that's really a topic where we see a lot of uptake on. Many of our clients are experimenting or actually already fully implementing that as part of their continuous life cycle. Other technologies, robotic process automation is an example of that, or the use of artificial intelligence type of techniques to really improve and continuously change process. But again, also there, RPA initiatives in isolation, I think that was also the point that Juliana started the conversation with, is not necessarily really delivering on the potential. You need to bring that into context of your wider operating model and how you're going to change that to be able then to make the right decisions on if it makes sense to automate in the first place, and if yes, what is then the right technology? So that's a wider, more integrated type of discussion. And I think that is also where we really see the most success of clients using more an integrated approach, really having that management insight in what is happening and use then data to make better decisions.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were talking about before in terms of we've spoken about here around end-to-end and that I suppose overall business approach, and how BPM should be the thing that guides all those enablers. Okay, whether it be that you're trying to use data to reveal a process, you're using RPA or API integration as that last mile interface, but taking that from an enterprise perspective, what does that look like? As we go into the next 10 years of transformation, what does that look like on an enterprise scale? Not just a spot fix over here, or a small, a small proof of concept that reveals an insight over here. How does that get operationalized in a continuous manner? So the next discussion we're going to talk about here is collaboration, sort of working through transformation. So we talk about the collaboration between IT and business is a challenge when your teams come from different backgrounds. We've spoken about it already here. And you might have different parts of the business that have different and competing priorities. So that alignment that we've spoken about already today is critical, because misunderstanding and diverging priorities can really start to lead to poor outcomes. It causes missteps, waste, and slow delivery of projects. And unnecessary failures along the way. So I'm just going to ask some general questions here. I would just lob in if you've got an answer. So from your perspectives, where do you sort of see high-performing organisations? How do they overcome this challenge of collaboration? Is there any successes that you've seen as you've gone through those gone through that journey in your own organisations?
If I may answer that first, Daniel.
Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. Middle of this year, we came up with a lab setting. This is when we call in all the so-called expert of processes and data architecture, because it was a enterprise architecture project. So we came together for like 2 months. So everyone was like in a lab setting. We put everything else behind and just focus on the initiative, the project. So when that happened, what we did was we really sat down and look at marrying the business strategy and also the digital strategy. There's no two way about it. It's the only way. So that, and we really focus on doing that and towards a common goal. And we saw how that worked. And that we have also established a so-called, moving forward on how do we marry these two together, how do we come up with a business architecture that aligned with digital strategy. We saw how we can align the business architecture and the data architecture, and then we saw how that will happen. But that is, of course, without a doubt, it takes a lot of focus, focus action, and everyone has got to really come together under the same goal. And we saw how that happened, and we know that can be done. Prior to that, I'm not certain that business strategy and digital strategy can really marry, and it may take some time. But we saw the value of what we did, and we know that it's possible. But everyone has got to sit together towards a common goal. As much as it sounded very textbook, but it can be done. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would echo that as well, having a common goal. And I think one of the key differentiators for us was being able to prioritize effectively. If you can prioritize your change across drivers that are relevant to all the different groups, teams, technology, business, ops, risk, then you can start making the right decisions. And when you make the right decisions, you eventually kind of address the problem statement here. And the reason why I say that is we have a lot of ideas for change. Like there's a lot of things in our backlog, but what we often do is we choose the wrong things. So we choose the wrong things. It ends up not being effective. It ends up not helping the right stakeholders, and then you just go down this vicious cycle where you're never going to get anything done. So it's all about, if you take a step back and look at what is my prioritization criteria. Do I engage the right stakeholders? Do I have their interests, whether it's increasing revenue or increasing operational efficiencies? How do I marry that together and make the right decisions as a group rather than in isolation?
Why do we choose the wrong thing? So just an interesting statement, because I agree with you. But why do you think we choose, even with all of the, I suppose, the alignment of those two teams, all the best intentions, we still choose the wrong stuff? Why do you think that is?
So, I'll give an example on our end. I think for a long time, our efficiency objectives were based on FTE savings, right? Reducing staff headcount. But it was probably the wrong approach to take in a growing business. We were growing, we were taking on more mandates, taking on more volumes. But what happened when you say that I want to invest in change that reduces headcount, it only delivers change in the teams that are already stable. Right? Those are the teams where you can reduce headcount. What we're trying to do now is we're trying to prioritize change based on where we can create capacity and scalability. Now that's delivering. You may or may not get headcount reduction and cost reduction, but what you will do is deliver change where it's needed the most. The teams that are stretched, running over capacity, having a lot of incidents, having a lot of errors. So that's just an example, but I think there are many different ones similar to that.
Yep. Any comments?
And I think that also, Yeah, because what you just mentioned, Alan, that reminds me also, taking the right priority also starts with understanding what it is that you're trying to achieve. What we see many of our clients also really focusing on is taking that customer requirement into account, or really start from the client and work your way back to what is actually that we need in order to deliver on the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. And that's typically something that crosses different types of areas in the business, and really having that end-to-end view and having the different stakeholders collaborate in delivering on that new to-be state is, I think, really, really critical. Because if you can optimize one of these particular elements in isolation, start throwing in some RPA technology to solve a certain problem, but that doesn't necessarily then deliver on the ultimate outcome that you're trying to achieve from a customer perspective, right? So I think really that holistic and more collaborative approach is something that I think is really critical. And I recognize that also in the work, Alan, that you described that you guys are doing, and also in Petronas. I think there are many examples of the relevance of that.
Thank you. Well, we've got a question here, and I'm mindful of the time. So, interesting question that's come through here. So, the question is from Arjuna. In the midst of price increasing of fossil energy all over the world, due to increasing demand after European energy crisis and starting to begin in the UK, how do you believe process excellence can contribute to resolve this issue? Any thoughts?
Okay, if I may answer that, I think that is one of the reasons why when you look at BPM, it has to be from the whole super system, the whole macro view first, and in understanding like really left to right, right to left, understanding what the customer wants, and we've seen cases of using process improvement in improving in doing our prognostic and diagnostic of customer demand, and how can we predict all of the process, all of the demand beforehand, and then the outlook of the demand and all that, and that can be embedded into process. And we have seen how that can be done. But of course, we have to go back to the fundamental, which is the process have got to be established first before we can really understand left to right, right to left of the process.
And I would also add, in our industry, when it comes to market volatility, increased client volumes, the name of the game is scalability. Unfortunately, it's been hard for many firms to measure their scalability. So you're not able to really forecast, simulate, and model how well we can handle additional volumes and growth in the future. So for us, process modeling and process management has helped us achieve that. It's helped us understand, where the bottlenecks are, where the true impactors of reduced scale exists in our end-to-end process, and that's where we need to attack if that is our priority. And that's allowed us to save a lot of effort, because in the past we've tried to address scale by addressing the wrong parts of that value chain, parts of that end-to-end flow. And that's why we've kind of under-recovered on some benefits. So again, BPM as a key tool to just understanding how to set us up for the future, handle the scale, and represent that scale in something that's meaningful to the people that care, whether it's the business or management teams.
Yeah.
Final thoughts, Michiel, before we wrap up about that sort of issue. BPM can't save the world. No, I'm not sure.
Exactly.
That would absolutely be a good statement there. But I think that also comes back to what we spoke about earlier, that it's really about creating and building a capability to change. And that change may be sometimes into smaller things to optimize certain particular parts of our business. And in some cases, it might be to do just something drastically different and really come up with a complete new business model or a complete new way of working. And I think that could be, speaking about, oil and gas, and then new capabilities or new opportunities to do things different that are more environmental friendly could be an example of that. But I think it's all about building that capability to be able to tap in on the opportunities and change the organization for the benefit of that.
45 minutes has gone past very fast. So Juliana, Alan, Nikhil, thank you so much for joining us on that chat today. Those of you who are watching, I hope you've gotten some feedback out of that. There'll be other forums to ask questions, I'm sure. Hit these guys up on LinkedIn if you've got any other questions. Otherwise, thanks so much for joining us, and I'll hand you back to Felicia.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a really exciting panel, and I really enjoyed it. It's one of those things, time flies so fast when you've got three very, very experienced individuals, and especially given the fact that this is a very changing environment right now. And I find that operational excellence really is taking a forefront in a lot of discussions, especially within the APAC region. So thank you guys so much. I hope you won't mind if we send over any questions that might come in from the audience at a later time offline, because we do follow up with our audience and audience members. You are going to receive a link for the on-demand, so you can watch this panel as many times as you'd like. And I did include their biographies and LinkedIn's in the bio widget. So please do connect with them and offline. And thank you guys so much. We are actually out of time and on to our next session. So just click and I'll see you guys there shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you.